here today. And boy, I know a lot of you guys had a chance to meet tons of you over time, but some of you I haven't yet. So welcome to Toolbox, especially if it's your first time here. And the way that James put it at the beginning, what we love to do is have men here inspiring stories that will help us all to live an inspired life. And there's lots of levels to what you can mean by inspired. It's everything from, I want to do better to something like, I want to walk with God. And there's all those things contained as part of what we do here. So I'm really fired up that you're here today and super fired up to have Shane with us today. And what a great treat to get somebody with your background, Shane, your experiences, your stories to be here. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you guys. Look forward to sharing some of my stories.
Yeah, can you guys hear all right in the back?
It didn't sound like it was very loud.
Can you guys turn Shane up, make sure we can hear him?
All right, cool. Thanks. That's better.
Perfect. Thanks. All right. Well, good. Well, let's just start with astronaut world, if we can. So, just the way that Robert said a second ago, 3 different trips to space, 3 different spacecraft. Space Shuttle Endeavour, the Russian Soyuz, and the SpaceX Crew Dragon X. I mean, that just sounds cool, okay? So I would just love for you to tell some astronaut stories, right? Like, what is it like? I mean, the blast off, take off, spacewalk. Take us into your world for a little bit.
Well, we don't have too much time, but hopefully I can give you a little glimpse of what it's like. Absolutely incredible, obviously, as you can all imagine. Riding 3 different rockets was quite a thrill for one. It takes about 8.5, 9 minutes to get to space, so that's how long you're riding the rocket while it's burning. Those 8.5, 9 minutes are absolutely incredible. We're accelerating the whole time. You're pulling G's. I mean, it's quite the ride. And what we're doing the whole 8.5 minutes is laughing our heads off, because it's like being on the best roller coaster ride you've ever been on. Going around that turn where you're pulling G's and laughing, but for 8.5 minutes, 9 minutes straight, right? I mean, it is quite a ride. So in 8.5 minutes, you've gone from 0, sitting on the launch pad, to 17,500 miles an hour. All right, so you guys would love it, okay? just like we did. I mean, we were watching our displays and doing everything, but we were enjoying the ride for sure. So that was quite an experience. Once you get to orbit, get to the space station, or even on the vehicle to look out the window at planet Earth, gosh, I mean, it's not a God's eye view, but it's pretty darn close, I think. It's so special to see our planet from that perspective. It's very humbling, for one, because we see the thin layer of atmosphere up there that's protecting all of us down here from living and dying. That's very humbling to see how thin that is, for one. But the view we have is, it's probably, I assume it's going to be like the new Earth one of these days, where it looks so peaceful, so serene, so strikingly beautiful. And pictures, hopefully you've seen some pictures of that, but those don't even do it justice, honestly. A really, really special place to be. But the coolest part, obviously looking at Earth is really amazing, but the coolest part is all about the people. Just like any job you've ever been in, any team you've ever been on, it really comes down to the people. And that's what makes it or breaks it. In our crews, the crews I was fortunate enough to fly with, people from Europe, from Japan, from Russia, and the US, were incredible human beings. And because of that, we got to have a great time while we were doing amazing things for our planet up there in space. And so, kind of a shameless plug here. If you guys, anybody been to the Infinite Houston? Anybody know what I'm talking about?
To what?
Infinite Houston. It's in town for a couple months. It's a VR kind of activity that you do, and you're on the space station. So I highly encourage you to do it. It's here for the month of May and June. Go check it out online, infinitehouston.com, I think. And I've taken my family there, and we filmed a lot of it when I was there. And so it is like, you'll see us, you'll see other people there. And if you want to get a kind of a glimpse of what space is like, take your family over there. You'll love it.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
It's awesome. Yep.
So you spent a cumulative 388, something like that, days in space?
Correct.
So over a year of your life, you spent abroad.
Abroad, yeah, I like that.
So what's it like to be on a space station? You ever get tired of the people you're with? And Where do you go? I mean,
Yeah,
what do you
thank
do?
goodness I did. And we do have a kind of a safe space, we'll call it, and that's your sleep station. Your sleep station's, most of you guys will know what a telephone booth is, right? And so when I talk to younger crowds, they're like, what are you talking about? But literally, it's a telephone booth size area, and that's your kind of safe space. And so you can go in there, shut the doors. It's completely private. That's where you sleep for one, but that's also where you have a computer to call home on. You can watch movies on it, do your emails and things like that. So if you need to get away, that's a place. The best place to get away is in this module called the cupola, which is all windows, and it's facing Earth all the time. And so I really spent usually about the last half hour of every evening before I went to bed, I'd just hang out in there and watch our planet go by. Pretty special place to kind of get away. But in general, life on the space station is amazing. We work from 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night, 12-hour work days. Mission control teams from around the world are telling us what to do in like every 5-minute chunk of those days. Very, very busy. Mainly doing research and science for not just for the U.S., but for all of humanity. So it's a pretty special thing. I've been fortunate enough to serve my country for like 38 years. Wow. In the Army and at NASA, but when we're on the space station, we're not just serving the United States, we're serving all of humanity. So even more humbling and bigger role there. So very, very special. We got to have some fun times together up there as well, as most successful teams do. But it was just a cool place to do it. We're in microgravity where everything's floating around, and so just think of all the things sitting on your table. Somehow they have to be affixed to that table, whether it's Velcro or duct tape. We have a lot of duct tape up there to stick things onto to keep things from floating around. But there's no up or down, and so I could be upside down talking to you right now, and it's completely normal. Your brain kind of figures that out after a few days. So it's a special environment.
That is crazy. Okay, so as Robert mentioned, at 0600 hours, you were out on a spacewalk. So that means you've opened the door and gone outside. All right, we've seen the movie Gravity, where the thing comes loose and the guy goes forever. So take us on a spacewalk for a second.
For
That's
sure.
got to be crazy.
Sandra Bullock was not there on any of mine to start with, but spacewalks are crazy. They're certainly the most dangerous things we ask any astronaut to do. You're in a 300-pound spacesuit when you go outside. It's incredible. It protects you. It's literally your own spacecraft that you're flying around while you're out there and doing incredible work. So we go outside to fix things that are broken or to install new equipment. That's basically what we do. Now, when you're outside, a lot of people ask me, hey, is it hot or cold in space? And I'm like, yes. Because when you go outside, you remember the speeds I told you we're going 17,500 miles an hour. Another way to think that's 5 miles a second. By doing that, we go around the Earth every 90 minutes. Okay, so if you think about, just like now, it's light outside here. The other half of the Earth is dark. And so every 45 minutes, we see a sunrise or a sunset. All right, 16 a day. Pretty crazy. Now, when the sun's out for 45 minutes, it's 200 degrees Celsius, so about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Very hot. And when the sun goes away for the next 45 minutes, it's minus 200 C. So 400-degree temperature swings every 45 minutes is pretty crazy. Our spacesuit, thank goodness, protects us from that, but you definitely know it's getting hotter or colder. But those are just some of the weird things that you have to think about when you're outside doing a spacewalk.
Yeah. So, okay. Did you ever have like an Apollo 13 moment, like, oh no, we're not going to make it back, or anything like that?
We had a few emergencies, I'll say. On this last mission, one of the Russian modules, a new one had just come up, and everybody's super excited about it. Unfortunately, its computer system was a little off, and so once it attached to the space station, mechanically connected with all its hooks and everything, its computers thought it was leaving the space station, so it started firing all its jets. Although we're still connected. So what that did was cause the space station to tumble out of control. Never happened before in the history of the world. But there I am, and of course our families are getting called, hey, the space station's out of control. They're freaking out. And we are, all the alarms are going off. We kind of meet like where we always do for any emergency and the way we've been trained, and talk to mission control real quickly, and then just start executing. And it took us about an hour to calm this thing down, and where we were in a stable configuration, but that was pretty sporty. It was literally tumbling so fast that mission control couldn't send commands to it like they normally would to calm it down. because it couldn't talk to the satellites and get the signal to the vehicle. So we ended up having to do that. So I guess I'm glad we listened in those classes we had probably 2 years before that event to know, we weren't like dozing off thinking of something else, but it all worked.
And did you say that was pretty sporty? Is that what you said?
Sporty was,
well, yeah, that sounds sporty to me, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. Okay, so, we got a little bit of your pedigree, if you will, in Robert's introduction, that you served long-term in the United States Army as a fighter helicopter pilot, and you went to West Point before that. So, but like becoming an astronaut, you just didn't pick up the want ads and say, I think I'm going to do that. So take us back, kind of give us the run up of your life, the sort of the backstory of Shane Kimbrough, how some of the defining moments or things that led you to not just doing what you do, but to being who you are.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Some of you guys are old enough to remember men land on the moon, right? Back in the late 60s, early 70s. I was a small child, and honestly, that was one of the defining moments for me. I had no idea what trajectory that would put me on, but I remember our family was so into it, and so just standing in front of that black and white TV watching it. And my grandparents lived right across from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and we spent a lot of time down there with them. My dad was gone to Vietnam quite a bit, and so when that would happen, we would go live with them. And my grandfather, much to his, he's really a huge inspiration for where I ended up, would drag me out to see anything launching. And back in those days, it's a space race, right? We're trying to beat the Russians at everything, and we'd see failures, we'd see successes, we'd see all kind of stuff. And so just having that background as a small child kind of I always wanted to do something in the space world. Astronaut was kind of cool, but I wanted to be part of the space community. I was an Army brat as well, so I moved around a lot as a kid. So I would say that was a defining moment where every couple of years you have to reacclimate to a new environment, make new friends, you leave old friends, and that just, as I look back, God's kind of preparing me for things along the way that I had no idea. I grew up as elementary school years in Germany, which was a fantastic opportunity as I look back on that. And then we settled in Atlanta after that, so that's what I call home. Got the chance to go to an incredible high school there, and then an opportunity to go to West Point, which was amazing. That was certainly a defining moment in anybody's life, going to an academy. Having no idea where that would take me, I knew it would certainly make me a better person and harden me up a bit, so to speak. And there were some tough times that those of you that have been to a school like that understand, but so worth the sacrifice once you get through something that's hard like that. And then, believe it or not, when I went to West Point, I kind of gave up on my dream of wanting to be in the space world or be an astronaut because I didn't realize you could actually do both. And it turns out you can. So a few years into the Army, I was kind of after the time I was with Robert, I met a gentleman in a blue flight suit, and I asked him what he did. And he's like, "Oh, I'm an Army astronaut." I was like, "What?"
Oh,
It's
wow.
like, Army has astronauts? How does that work? And so he kind of gave me a few pointers and things to, I started applying for the program and applied again and again and again. I think the fifth time I finally got accepted. So it was a process. Perseverance was certainly part of the journey getting there. And I really wasn't ready, even though when I was applying early on, I thought I was ready, but God knew I wasn't ready. I certainly wasn't ready. I needed more education. I needed more experiences to really be the best astronaut I could.
Oh, that's cool. So as you're coming up through the ranks of all those things, as you know, there's a faith strand to who we are and what we do here in Toolbox. So what's your journey there, your spiritual journey? How'd that come along?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to grow up in a Christian family. My parents were, we were at everything, kind of like old Southern Baptists were, Wednesday nights, Sunday nights, Sundays. So I kind of grew up in that world. That faith wasn't really my own until probably middle school when I came to faith in Christ. But of course, then I was so young, and you don't understand. I really didn't grasp it all probably until after college. I was, I kind of would go to church when I could and things like that throughout my college days even. But I just had a great foundation that my parents provided that helped me through, all the things I just told you about. And whether or not, I was just trying to be that good example in everything I did with this kind of faith in the background through all of it, which was pretty special for me.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So you shifted gears a few years ago, all right, and so you got your Army background, and now you're working in the private sector with Quanta. Your role is Vice President of Strategic Operations. So I'm assuming that sort of a part of your Army background and your astronaut background and probably your current role involves something like, the ability to formulate a plan, the ability to recruit and equip a team, and the ability to execute what's sitting in front of you, which sounds pretty much to me like leadership, right? So I think we're always all sort of hungry to know how we can learn to be better leaders in whatever realm we're leading. And so here'd be my question. So if you wrote a book on leadership, what would you call it, and what would the first 3 chapters be?
All right, here we go. There's I could probably list about 10 chapters, but let's. There's a lot of things that roll around in my mind with this. I think I would call it something like exceed expectations. And I've kind of always had that mentality, like I just wanted to do that little extra, with that intangible, that little extra thing. And so I think I would call it that. And what I mean is like, and you can't always do that. You can't always exceed expectations. But if you have that mentality, for me, it helped me win more than I lost, right? Just gave me that kind of extra thing. And you can apply that to family, to work, to friendships. Always just trying to do that extra little bit. So I think I would call the book Exceed Expectations. A couple of chapters. Certainly something like others before self, having a servant's heart. Those kind of things, to me, throughout my experiences, have really proven to be a good leader, to really make me a decent leader when you just, unconsciously always put others before yourself, right? And it sounds easy to do. It's not easy to do, as all of you know that have been in the workplace or even with your family. But it's something that I struggle and I work on all the time still. But I think just having that servant's heart is so important to a great leader. I think show up might be another chapter. What I mean by showing up is like you got to be there. If you have a team that's working and they're out in the field and you're sitting in the office, that's not really gaining the trust of your employees or your soldiers. In my case, I think you really got to be there. You got to be there for the long days, the long nights with them, and by doing that, it just gains an incredible amount of trust that they're going to have in you, and so that when you make a decision that may not be super popular, they're going to know you have their best interest at heart. If you've kind of created those bonds through just showing up and being there. Yeah. Let's see another one. Do hard things, I think is a good one. And Robert actually helped me, early on as a lieutenant, when I was lieutenant, to understand what that meant. And he mentioned earlier about flying at night. Like, we could have done this all in the daytime, but what's the harder thing to do? Harder thing is to get our company trained in the toughest conditions that we could so that if we ever had to go to combat, we could be ready to go. And so do hard things, and sometimes that means you fail, right? And so don't be afraid to do hard things. You learn so much when you fail, and I hope you guys aren't afraid to fail, because that's where I've learned most of my things is when I've gone after something hard and maybe not have successfully done it, but I learned so much as a leader, as a person. I got skills that I normally wouldn't have had if I didn't do the hard things. One more, maybe?
Yeah, come on,
right.
Keep going. Right. They're taking notes. We're going to write this, baby. Let's go.
One I think is very important is calm in the middle of chaos.
What is it?
Calm in the middle of chaos as a leader. I just think you've got to be that rock that your troops or your team is looking for. And how are you going to respond when things are really going off the rails? I've had some great leaders that modeled that for me that I got to learn from. I had some that didn't model that so well that I learned from as well. Wow. And so I just think that's what I've seen, especially in the crazy environments I've been exposed to in space and in the Army that I've really hung on to. Just you got to be that calm person in the middle of the chaos.
Okay, so you can bring more chapters if you get them to, but let me ask a question about that. Okay, calm in the middle of chaos, like this unanxious presence. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's part of that's
There's something to
personality,
that.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Part of it's personality, but for me, a lot of it is just knowing. My faith plays a huge role in that, right? And that I know whatever's going on, He already knew about it, right? And so I have this faith that I can lean back on and just know that, all right, we had this terrible situation. Let's do what we've been trained, how we've been trained, and execute, and generally things work out. And you look back on things like that, and you're like, that's why God allowed that to happen to me, because I needed to grow, or I was maybe not strong in my faith, and he was testing me, and things like that. So to me, being that person, a lot of you aren't like that because you're a little more wound up or whatever, but I think in that situation, man, if you can be strong and kind of even keel, I think your teams and your soldiers will recognize it and be super confident and know that everything's going to be okay, right? And so whether that's your faith bringing you that or your training or whatever, I think I have a little bit of all that gets me to that point.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know sometimes that when I get anxious in the middle of chaos or whatever, there's a pride factor to it, like, oh no, I think I look bad, and so that, torques me
just
out.
an example, like all 3 times I was launching on a spacecraft, right? You're sitting on there for a couple hours, you're getting ready to go. Everybody kind of shows their stress a little differently in the crew. I fell asleep all 3 times on the launch pad. Like, I was so calm.
You got to be kidding.
And, like, just chill. Like, I had so many people that were pouring prayer over me. And, I just felt like God put me in that exact spot I was supposed to be in my life. And I was chill. I was good to go. And I was ready for that ride I told you about earlier.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Anyway. That's awesome, because in my mind, I think I told you this before, but is the launch of Apollo 13 in the movie where, they keep panning back and forth between Tom Hanks's eyes and the abort button, like, is he going to go for it? And, he was sweating and you're sleeping. That's pretty good.
Well, there's some periods where there's downtime. And so that's where, on this last one, I said, all right, we got 15 minutes. Everybody close your eyes and let's just chill. And so that's what we did. So.
That's so valuable. Wow. Any other chapters you want to mention?
No, I think that's enough.
That's enough. Okay. All right.
Appreciate you getting my book outline for me, though.
Yeah, I know. It's going to work. Yeah, that's right. Just a little shout out to Toolbox on the front cover. That'd be all right. Good. Okay, so you're already doing this, but and you've alluded to it in the leadership lessons. But one of the things that we always are talking about in Toolbox is we love our speakers to talk about the real stuff of their world, trials, opportunities, temptations, etc., and how their faith helps them navigate the real stuff of their life. So I assume the same is true of an astronaut or a vice president of strategic operations or, colonel in the United States Army, So can you take us a little bit more into ways that maybe your faith plays out in the middle of the places you've been placed?
Yeah, for sure. We're normal people, just like everybody, so don't think that we or an athlete or an actor or actress is some different person, right? We all have real life going on, and I want to make sure you guys understand that. Faith for me was it's always been this moral compass that I've had to fall back on, to lean on, even times when I wasn't maybe strong or doing what I should be doing as a Christian. It's always kind of guided me, kept me on the rails, I guess is one way to say it. I would deviate sometimes, as we all do, I think, going on this Christian journey, but just having that moral compass of faith kind of kept me within the boundaries that God wanted me, and it's really helped me out. How do I use that in the workplace? I try to just be kind of getting back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, just that great example for people. Try to be humble. Try to just be there, showing up, and people have seen and told me this after the fact, like, there's something a little different about you. I'm not quite sure what it is, and especially in the government, we weren't really allowed to share our faith. We had to be agnostic, but people just knew there was something special or something different about the way I treated other people, the way I respected people, the way I just put others kind of before myself most of the time. And so that kind of example, I just want to challenge all of you to hopefully you can do that at the workplace, in your families, at the restaurant, at the grocery store. It's funny. I catch myself now, like, somebody in traffic cuts me off, and I'm like, well, I shouldn't probably acted that way, right? And so there's so many opportunities God gives us every day to be that light for people. And so hopefully you'll get challenged by that like I am and respond correctly, which is what I got to work on sometimes.
Oh, that's great. So one of the things you mentioned when you were going through your chapters of your book, you mentioned, we learn a lot from failure or difficulty. Any particular things that stand out in your memory of like lessons you've learned or cautions you gained or whatever through?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through a lot of things. I would say our family has. Obviously, the obvious ones are, when you're separated off the planet for long periods of time is a big one. But even medical situations with all of our kids, myself, we've had struggles that a lot of you probably have gone through as well. And what Robbie and I have found is that we're always stronger and we always do things better when we're doing it together. So we've gained strength out of knowing that we've got to do this together. And what I mean by that is difficult times going on, like we have got to be connected. We got to be communicating. We got to be on the same page for our kids, for whatever we're going through at the time. And by doing that, and we've made some strategic decisions like along the way. Like, I know, how many of you guys have like middle school, high school kids in here right now? So you guys are going through it, right? So it's those years, when I look back on them, and they were chaotic, they were fun, they were like, how are we getting this all done? I'm coaching the kids' teams, and like a lot of you are doing and have done, and I'm going to space. I'm like, how did this all work out? But it's a business trip, so to speak. But one thing that Robbie and I did that really helped us, I think, get through difficult times and prepare us for being a parent of a high schooler was we taught Sunday school started with their 8th grade group, and we took them all the way through senior year in high school, and they were a year or two in front of our kids. And so we didn't do this on purpose. That was just kind of the opening. Our church was asking us to step into this role, and doing that together was incredible. Wow. I mean, we got so close and connected during those years where we were pouring into other kids, not even our own. But then to see kind of what they're going through and the challenges they're having helped us be much better parents to be able to prepare our kids along the way. So, of course, God had that in mind all the way. But something like that. I would just say stay connected, do things, those you marry, do things together. Have boundaries for your kids, I think, is another good one. I think we'll talk about kids here in a minute. But, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's great. So I think I heard you talk at some point in time about even from the space station helping your kids with homework and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah, we try to keep it as normal as possible, if that's even possible. But if they had trouble with homework question, I'd say, just email it up to us. If I can't figure it out, somebody up here can. So we'll get you an answer. Make sure you document it correctly, right? But that just gave them a sense of like, hey, Dad's not that far away, right? I mean, he's actually there, and we can talk to him and video chat even if we had to kind of work through. I mean, homework's kind of a funny thing, but, hey, they get in a car accident, they get sick. All these things still happen when we're off the planet, right? Yeah. So working through some of those was the ability we had to communicate was pretty special.
Oh, that's great. Wow. Okay, so as I mentioned, you've made this career shift. You had a few of them, from soldier to astronaut to VP with Quanta. All right. I think any one of us as guys recognizes there's this tendency to draw our sense of identity from what we do, like we are what we do. And so when what we do is kind of shining, and we're winning, we feel like we're valuable, and when it's not going quite so well, we can kind of tank a little bit. And so I'd love to just hear anything you have to tell us about, first of all, the transition, how you make that decision. I'm going to move out of serving the welfare of, the entire country and moving into the private sector. But there's got to be a significant identity shift when you go from, the launch pad to driving down 610 to work in the morning. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference there, right? But I mean, really, there's got to be some battle in there, I would think. So I'd love to hear what you've experienced and how that you went through that.
Yeah, a few transitions. Obviously, the biggest transition was leaving the government a year and a half or so ago and going in the private sector. And I had many friends that did that before me, and about a year and a half later or so, they're coming back, begging to come back into the astronaut corps, begging to come back in the service because it was not what they expected, and they did not have a good experience. So, we kind of had that going in. Let me kind of back up a little bit. After my last flight in 2021, it was very clear to Robbie and I that it was time to do something else. We had an amazing run at NASA, 20-something years there, and an incredible career. Got the privilege of flying 3 times, which we never could have even imagined to do that. But it was God was just telling us, hey, it's time for you to do something different. Mm-hmm. And so, very clear path. Now, I had a unique skill set, as you might imagine. And so when you start talking to people about working for them, they all want you to come work for them, but they have no idea what to do with you. All right, no idea. And everybody would have bet their paycheck we were going to move back to Georgia, and that was our plan. Like, as soon as we're done with this, we're going back to Georgia, and we had some decent opportunities there as well, but it just wasn't playing out. It wasn't God's plan, apparently, to be back there in this season. So got a great opportunity with Quanta. I had known some of the executives there for a little while socially, and got an incredible offer. And the transition, I mean, when I tell my colleagues how smooth and easy and incredible this has been, I almost don't want to tell them because none of them have had this experience that have left government service. And so very, very blessed for sure. It certainly is validated that we made the right decision, the one that God was pushing us to all the time, even though we were trying to fight it and go to Georgia, even though this great opportunity came up. So just super blessed to be with an incredible company with great leadership, with great kind of ethical, moral integrity kind of values that I'm used to. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how that was going to transition, but again, we've been super blessed. An incredible culture there as well, which I did not expect that, honestly. With any private company, it's just different, right? And people don't have the same leadership training or background, but have been my expectations have been exceeded by doing this. And so totally a God thing. Very lucky. I got the chance to do this, and this will be a season, and then God's got something else for me down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I mean, there's a sense of, I think there's a lot of things that we're talking about that you can just kind of see that there's a framework or worldview to the way that you're looking at what you're doing and experiencing. Yeah. That see something behind what you're doing.
Right. And to your earlier question, I didn't even really get to that, but I never had my identity as my job, right? And I say I never. Overall, that was not who I was. I had times in my career where, I was getting celebrated for whatever and being this and that, and boy, that felt good and all that, but God would remind me, hey, that's not who you are, right? Mm-hmm. And so that has certainly helped this transition too, because like you said, I mean, as an astronaut, you just kind of flown from space, you come back and you're getting celebrated everywhere, and you might think you're something. To me, it was just something I did. I got an incredible chance to do something cool, something a little different. Yeah. And being in the Army was amazing. I love serving my country, don't get me wrong, for any of that stuff, but it just wasn't who I was. And so that's helped this transition. Like, people are like, hey, don't you miss flying jets, at NASA? And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but I really don't. To me, again, that's helped validate that the identity I have is in Christ and something that I did.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so a couple more questions. And one is, and I described this scene to you before, okay? And by the way, you said that Apollo 13 is the most realistic space movie, right?
For me, for
sure. For you personally,
yeah.
Okay, so there's a scene that you guys remember in Apollo 13 where they've been in space, the capsule's compromised, they are going to re-enter through the atmosphere, and so they're screaming back towards space, trying to come through the atmosphere, and then there's that period of time where they go radio silent. All right, so the scene is in NASA, all the guys are sitting in front of their screens, and it's just quiet. Everybody's just watching and waiting for a blip or a sound. And then they pan to another scene that is in someone's home, where all the astronauts' families and a priest are gathered around the TV, And, Walter Cronkite's on the, background saying, we're just waiting for the, whatever. And so, but to me, there's this amazing analogy to this because it's this super intense scene where what they're really doing is waiting for the men to reemerge. And finally they do, the silence breaks, the guys show up, and everybody cheers. Okay, so I think there's a great cultural analogy that we live in a culture that is waiting for the men to reemerge. And so I'd love to...
Mic drop there.
Yeah. So, you got any call for us as men?
Wow, that's a strong one there. It's tough to add anything onto that. If you're a dad and you have a son, I mean, that's a great way you can kind of influence that next generation that I think needs some help. I think we all think they might need some help, but we have one son, and I just brag on him for a minute. He just left for Korea a couple days ago. He's in the Army, Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and so it was tough for Mama certainly sending him off a couple days ago, but we know he's where he's supposed to be, and he's going to do great things for our nation over there, and grow as a leader and as a human and as a Christian. So he's going to be putting some situations and opportunities he's going to have to really grow. So we're excited about that.
Yeah.
So we, I do want to go back to your story though, because that 8 or 9 minutes of blackout time, they call it, that still exists today. And so it's a tough time for the families. So with SpaceX, with all the vehicles we had, there's just that moment when you're going through the plasma that you're not going to have communications. And so it's always encouraging when you get that blip or you get that voice call from the commander that, hey, we're out of it. And mission control is holding their breath the whole time and celebrating.
Yeah. Well, you're helping us to do that in our worlds for the people who are watching, waiting for us to come back in. So thanks a ton for that. Okay, my last question, and then we probably have a chance for a question or two from the crowd. And that is, this is where you get to exercise, the calm in the midst of chaos. Because there's always, and when we have this many people in a room, there's always, we won't know it, but there's always somebody who's just in a bad spot right now. Things have fallen apart one way or another. Whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, they're just in a bad spot. So if you just had an opportunity to just do some coaching to a guy who was in a bad spot, any broad brushstroke directions you'd give to us?
Yeah, first of all, you're not alone. We've all been there. A lot of us are maybe in that spot right now. When I get in spots like that, I think prayer is a huge thing that we can all do, and you can have others do it. Don't be afraid to tell your friends, tell your family what you're going through so they can help you and pray for you. A lot of us sometimes as men, are too proud to do that. Yeah. And so I encourage you to break those walls down. Find somebody you can have some confidence in so that they can help you and pray for you. I heard a good analogy on this one time. It's if you think about a kind of a small town parade where the streets are lined and packed with people and there's just floats coming down the parade route. And a little kid kind of comes up in the middle of mom and dad's legs and all they can see is that float right in front of them. All right? And that float might be a good float. It might be a bad float. Who knows? But that kid is just so mesmerized. The only person that sees the whole parade is the person up on top of the biggest building in town. Right on. All right? And so we all have good floats in our lives, and we all have some bad floats coming. If you're in a good spot right now, I hope you know there's a bad one coming. There is. That's just life. Yep. Right? And God's the only one in our lives that really can see that whole parade play out. And so when you're at a good spot, let's rejoice. Let's celebrate those. When you get in those bad ones, I lean heavily on prayer. We kind of come together as a family when those things are going on to try to help each other get through those difficult times. And we're all going to have them, though. Unfortunately, that's just life. But the good news is it's only one float. That bad thing is just one float. There's a good one coming right after it. Right? And so you got to get through those tough times. We'll actually grow through those. And when those good floats start coming again, you're going to realize that's why I went through that bad one, because I'm stronger. I learned something different. I can now affect or influence other people that I couldn't do before that bad thing happened.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. Really good. Okay. We got a minute. Anybody got a question for Shane? This is right there, Jack.
Any aha moments?
Any aha moments? I assume you're talking about in space, right? We had some incredible, auroras are kind of a hot topic in the world today because almost a lot of people got to see them the last few days. The perspective we have seeing auroras from space is, can't beat it, right? We were on top of it, flying through it, and we saw, this last mission, we saw them daily, if not 4 or 5 times a day because we're going around so many times. And so the biggest aha moment on the last mission, usually when aurora happens, everybody just starts yelling aurora and people fly to the windows and get a camera and start taking pictures. But this wasn't planned, but towards the end of our last mission, all of us kind of gravitated, not a great word, to the cupola, which was the thing with all the windows, right? We're all upside down as you would think of us, facing Earth. And we got in there, it's pitch black dark, we're going through a night pass. And typically we're talking, we're goofing around, but for whatever reason, we all just got completely silent. 7 of us packed in there, like face to face. You can't even fit 7 people in there. But we were in there, and we went through several auroras in that pass. And that moment was just, to me, one of the most special times that I had up there because we all got to experience this thing that we've seen many times, but not together, 7 of us, and not with complete silence. And so it was kind of just this reverent moment that I got to experience.
Really cool. Good. Yeah, Pat?
When you're up there with, space station stuff, cosmonauts, how did y'all communicate?
Yeah,
How to communicate with cosmonauts.
Yeah, great question. So bottom line is we have to know Russian. So they know a little English. I would say we know more Russian than they know English. And when I flew with the Russians on my second flight, I definitely had to know Russian, right? And not hey, where's the bathroom Russian? It's like technical NASA lingo, acronyms, all in Russian and Cyrillic, because all our checklists, that's how they were written. And when you're in that spacecraft, the Russian spacecraft, you're talking to mission control in Moscow. So I had to be quite keen. Now, the way our crew did it, realistically on the space station, and we decided this, and when I was a commander, I was like, hey, here's how we're going to do it. When we were talking to a cosmonaut, we would speak in Russian, and they would answer in English. And that just kept us working on our vocabulary. You could get in a hole up there and kind of just Russians do Russian things and U.S. do U.S. things, but that's not the way we wanted to be a team. And so that's how we practically did it on the space station. When you really need something is in an emergency, right? So whoever the commander of the space station is was going to make this very clear early on, like when the emergency happens, depending on where it is, we're going to speak this, or we're going to speak that. And so you got to know that language really for the emergency.
Nice. Last question, Hank.
Yes. Did you know Mike Anderson by chance?
I knew Mike Anderson, yes.
Oh, he was a dear friend of mine.
Wow.
He brought his wife out to my ministry, and we were beginning to be close. Then all of a sudden, on his way back, what happened.
For sure.
How do you deal with the fear, the disappointment, and all of that when things happen in your sphere of influence?
Yeah, so he asked about the Columbia accident. A good friend of his, Mike Anderson, and a friend of mine was on that vehicle. And he asked, how do you deal with the fear and just kind of the, I guess getting ready for something potential like that. I was working at NASA at the time. I was not an astronaut. The Army had sent me down to work here for a few years, and then I got selected after that. I was in the first class selected after the Columbia accident. And of course, it goes through your mind. And they actually asked us, hey, you've been selected, but do you still want to do it because of the dangers? And we're like, are you kidding me? Like, we all wanted to do it to honor those people on the Columbia vehicle, right? You want to continue their legacy that they had built. And so for me, the fear part, again, I'm a little different and a little weird, I guess, but my faith plays a huge part there where I know God has me in his hand. I know if today's the day, or if that day on the launch pad was the day I was supposed to go see him, that's not a bad thing. Right? That's all right. In our family, we got them all comfortable with that as well, right? That it wasn't just me. It was a family decision for us to go launch and get in this crazy, really dangerous environment. But of course, he, thank goodness, brought us through those things 3 times. And we certainly honor the accidents that we've had. We've gotten better as an agency. Every time one of those things happens, we get better. NASA doesn't shy away from it. They really dig in, see what went wrong, make things better. And haven't had one in a while, knock on wood. So hopefully that'll continue with just the things that we're put in. It's a dangerous business, though, right? Being in the military kind of got me ready for that mentally, got our family ready for that mentally. When you deploy, like I deployed, as Robert said, to Desert Storm, and I didn't know if I was coming home. I didn't know when I was coming home. I didn't know anything. And back then, there was no communications. We couldn't email or text or call. And so you're really kind of early on in our career, the bit was set that, hey, you know, you got to put it in God's hands and go execute the very best you can with the team you have.
Outstanding. Well, that's a good place for us to bring it into a landing, a splashdown. How about a big thank you to Shane Kimbrough?